Hello, this is Mrs. Bewley. This is a quick description on how to complete your Block 5 discussion. First, navigate to the discussion under Content. Scroll down to Block 5, looking at the gray modules on the left. Under Week 14, you should see this Block 5 discussion lab write-up. Go ahead and click into the discussion. It's this one with the double chat boxes here. And then the instructions are right here. You will not be conducting an experiment. Again, you will not be conducting this experiment. You will simply be writing out a hypothesis and explaining how you could test this experiment. So for part 1, you're writing out a hypothesis about energy absorption and reflection. Use the information from our course content. Use what we've talked about in class on energy absorption and reflection. So these are some questions to get you thinking about making a hypothesis. Do some colors absorb more light than others? Do materials absorb or reflect more light than others? How could you indirectly measure the amount of sunlight absorbed by an object? So think of things outside. If you need a hint here, what are things that absorb more of the sun's radiation? What are things that absorb less? What are some ways that you could test that? And then you'll write out a design for your experiment. So let me show you my example here. And then maybe you'll think of some of your own hypotheses. For my example, and this is right underneath here if you want to look at it again, my hypothesis was if the color black absorbs more heat than the color white, then the temperature of a black box left outside in the sun would be higher than the temperature of a white box. So pretty simple. You can kind of switch that around a little bit and think of other objects that might absorb more heat, like asphalt versus grass. You could put out objects outside to test this. Solar ovens would be a fun way to test this. So think of some different ideas about absorption, how heat is taken in versus how heat is reflected, and how you could test it. So that's an easy 5 points. That's your hypothesis. That's the first part of this discussion. The second part is to write out the design. So start out with a quick description, like I did here. To test this hypothesis, I could conduct a simple experiment. In the experiment, I would cover one box in black construction paper and one in white construction paper. Then I would leave them in the sun for 4 hours. Finally, I would test the temperature inside the box to see which had absorbed more heat. So just give me a quick description. What does your experiment look like? And then go ahead and write out as if you were expecting someone to complete this experiment. So step 1, gather your materials. Write out what materials you would need if you were completing this lab. Step 2, set up the experiment. What does the person completing this lab need to do? For my experiment, they would cover one box in white construction paper, glue it down, cover one box in black construction paper, glue it down, set the box outside. Pretty simple. And then step 3, gather the data. What does the person completing this lab need to do to measure the experiment? What kind of data can they expect to find? After the boxes have been outside for 4 hours, take the temperature inside each box, record the data, and then I said to repeat the experiment at least twice. So whatever your idea is, you want to figure out a way to test how heat is absorbed and how it is reflected. What is something that you can do a simple lab with and describe? Again, part 1 is your hypothesis. Part 2, write out the design for the experiment. You are not actually doing the lab, you're just writing it out. If you have any questions, you can email me. I'd be happy to help you brainstorm some ideas.